Forbidden from attending my only daughter's wedding, I secretly replaced the $3,000 veil with the one I used to wear, sewing a message inside that would seal the prenuptial agreement on the first lie. The groom was left penniless, and my daughter lost her mother. Welcome to Stories of Auntie Maya. I share new life stories here every day, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video. Drop a comment down below telling me where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I read every single comment, and it helps me to know I'm not alone in this. I'm Diane Montgomery, the mother they tried to erase. Richard's my husband of 41 years, the quiet man who still measures twice and cuts once. Olivia's our only daughter, the little girl I once sewed christening gowns for at 3 a.m., now engaged to Alistair Finch, the smiling snake who convinced her parents were embarrassing. And this is the night before everything changes. I'm sitting alone in the back room of Montgomery Taylor's, the place that smells like chalk, coffee, and every promise we ever made. The gooseneck lamp is the only light, throwing a warm gold across the veil in my lap. My veil, the one I wore when I married Richard, the one I just finished making look brand new again. My fingers are shaking as I tie off the last invisible stitch. The real $3,000 salon veil is supposed to be in the silk box beside me. I lift the lid. Empty. Just the ghost of lavender and a rectangle of dust where something important used to hide. I go real still. Because that box didn't just hold lace, darlin'. It held the second copy of the prenup with the clause Alistair never saw coming. And now I know he's been in here snooping. I smile into the dark, small, tired, and mean as hell. Let him look. The real contract isn't in that box anymore. It's sewn into this veil, word for word, in thread no one can see until it's too late. Tomorrow, when my baby girl walks toward that liar wearing my vows on her head, she's going to learn exactly what honor costs. Stay with me. We're just getting started. I'm sitting here in the back room of Montgomery Taylor's, the only light coming from the little gooseneck lamp over my sewing machine. My fingers are shaking a little, not just from the chemo, but because I'm putting the very last stitch into this veil. It looks exactly like the one Olivia picked out from that fancy bridal salon in Richmond. Same French lace, same tiny seed pearls along the edge. Except it isn't. It's mine. The one I wore when I married Richard in 1978. The one I hand-stitched while I was 8 months pregnant with Olivia, humming hymns so she'd come into the world knowing peace. I tie off the thread, bite it clean. The real salon veil, the one that cost $3,000 I couldn't afford, is folded neat in its silk-wrapped box right beside me. I lift the lid just to look at it one more time. The box is empty. Just the faint smell of lavender sachet and nothing else. My heart drops straight through the floorboards, because that box didn't just hold lace. Tucked under the tissue was the second notarized copy of the prenuptial agreement, the one with the clause nobody was ever supposed to notice until it was too late. I sit real still, listening to the old building creak around me. The radiator clanks once, then nothing. Somewhere out front, the neon open sign buzzes even though we've been closed for weeks. I know exactly 2 people who knew that hiding spot existed, me and Alistair. My fingers brush the veil I just finished. My veil, the one I'm going to make sure goes down that aisle tomorrow whether they want me there or not. I run my thumb over the tiny stitches, each one a prayer, each one a promise. I lean down real slow and whisper into the dark like it's one of you sweet ladies watching tonight. They think they took everything from me. They think a dying woman has nothing left to fight with. I smile, small and tired and mean as hell. But Mama still has the second copy, and tomorrow when my baby girl walks toward that liar with my real vows on her head, she's going to learn what honor costs. I close the empty box, set it aside like it don't matter anymore, because it don't. The real contract's been sewn into the lining of this veil, every word of that secret clause, hand-stitched in invisible thread right between the pearls. They'll never see it coming. I turn off the lamp. The room goes black except for the streetlight leaking through the blinds, cutting silver bars across my pale arms. Tomorrow, Belle Meade Manor is going to find out what happens when you tell a mother she can't come to her only daughter's wedding. The shop is quiet except for the hum of the old refrigerator in the back and the tick-tick-tick of the wall clock that's been 5 minutes fast since 1993. I'm standing under the one bulb that still works, surrounded by piles of ivory envelopes with gold calligraphy. Belle Meade Manor, peonies flown in from Ecuador, a custom 10-tier cake that cost more than my first car. Every single bill stamped paid because I sold the only thing I swore I'd never sell. My wedding dress. I still smell the ghost of it sometimes. That mixture of silk and the Chanel No. 5 Richard saved up 6 months to buy me for our first anniversary. I laid it out on this very cutting table the day the auction house came, watched a woman from New York slide it into a garment bag like it was nothing more than fabric. She paid $42,000 and never even asked why my hands were shaking. I pick up the final invoice, the one for Olivia's veil, $3,000 for a scrap of lace, and I laugh. It comes out ugly and cracked, because that veil is sitting upstairs in my apartment right now, folded in acid-free tissue, tags still on. The one she'll actually wear tomorrow is the one I wore when I walked to Richard with our baby already kicking inside me. Same stitches, same prayers, same vows. I set the paper down and catch my reflection in the big tailoring shears. Lord, I look dead already. Cheeks hollow, eyes too big, skin the color of the muslin we use for mock-ups. The port under my collarbone throbs like it's got its own angry heartbeat. 6 months, maybe 8, the doctor said, give or take how stubborn I decide to be. I slide the invoices into the folder and kneel to shove it under the sewing table, where I keep the important things. That's when I see it. The little calico box I made in 1981, the one with the cross-stitched "Honor Above All" on the lid, it's crooked. I always line the corners up with the table leg. Always. Someone's been in here, lifted the lid, touched what's mine. Inside that box is the needlepoint square I finished the week Olivia was born, and beneath it, folded so small it looks like nothing, the master copy of the real prenup. The one with the clause Richard and I added after Alistair's lawyer sent over the friendly draft. The clause that says if either party lies about money, lies about anything that matters, the entire agreement is ash. I buried it there because nobody looks under a dying woman's sentimental junk. My fingers go cold. Alistair's been here. Had to be. Olivia wouldn't know where to look, and Richard would rather burn the place down than move that box 1 inch without telling me. I sit back on the cold floor, knees creaking, and stare at the crooked lid. A laugh bubbles up again, softer this time. He thinks he's hunting me. Thinks he's 1 step ahead because some papers are missing. Baby boy, I stitched the real contract into the hem of the veil you're going to watch my daughter walk down the aisle in. Every single word of that clause, tiny invisible stitches only I can see. You can steal every box in this shop. You can burn the place to the ground. Tomorrow, when that veil touches her lying head, the trap snaps shut. I reach out and gently, so gently, straighten the calico box back to perfect 90-degree angles. I cradle the veil against my chest like it's the baby I lost between Olivia and the one who never came. The apartment above the shop is dark except for the streetlight leaking through the blinds, striping the bed in silver bars. Richard's already asleep in his chair downstairs. He said he'd just needed to rest his eyes, but I know he can't stand to watch me fold this thing one more time. I sit on the edge of the mattress and let the lace spill across my knees. 45 years old, and it still smells faintly of the gardenias I carried the day I married Richard. I was 22, pregnant, terrified, and so sure love would be enough. I sewed every inch of this veil while Olivia practiced somersaults in my belly, humming the same hymn my mama hummed when she taught me to stitch. I told myself the stitches would hold us all together. Me, Richard, the baby, the life we were building one careful seam at a time. Turns out stitches can be picked out if someone's cruel enough. I smooth the lace flat and run my thumb along the hem. Invisible thread size 100, the kind you only use when you never want anyone to know you were there. That's where the real prenup lives now. Every word of the clause Richard and I added after Alistair's lawyer sent over that smug little standard agreement. I stitched it in the dark so many nights my eyes burned, copying the legal language letter by letter, knotting every period, backstitching every comma. If anyone ever unravels that hem, they'll find the exact sentence that will burn Alistair's world down. If either party willfully conceals or misrepresents their financial or legal status, this contract is void immediately, and all assets revert to the injured party. The injured party being my daughter, whether she knows it yet or not. I lift the veil to my face and breathe it in one last time. It smells like hope and hospital soap and the ghost of the woman I used to be. I whisper into the lace the way I used to whisper lullabies against Olivia's soft baby hair. Love is not something you measure in dollars, Richard, I say to the empty room, practicing the line I've been turning over in my head for weeks. But honor is. My voice cracks on the last word. I press the little silver recorder against the silk and hit the button again. Love is not something you measure in dollars, Richard, but honor is. I let the red light blink for a long second. And tomorrow, if that boy tries to buy my daughter with my own blood money while he's hiding a bankruptcy and God knows what else, then honor is going to cost every single one of them. I click it off and slide the recorder into the pocket of the navy dress hanging on the back of the door. The dress I planned to wear as mother of the bride before they decided I was too country for their pictures. It's simple, almost severe. The kind of dress you wear to a funeral. Fitting. Richard's soft snore drifts up the stairs. I smile despite everything. 41 years and he still snores like a freight train, still measures twice, cuts once, still looks at me like I hung the moon even when I'm bald and hollow-eyed from chemo. I fold the veil one final time, slow, reverent, the way you fold something sacred. Then I lay it on top of the dress like a challenge. Tomorrow morning we'll drive south. 10 hours to Virginia. 10 hours for me to decide how loud I'm willing to be when I walk into that manor with nothing but this veil and the truth stitched into it. I turn off the bedside lamp. The room goes black except for the faint red glow of the recorder. I whisper into the dark, if honor gets compromised tomorrow, sweethearts. Everybody pays. The boy who thought he could steal my baby. The girl who forgot where she came from. Even the mother who let it happen. I close my eyes, because some prices aren't measured in dollars. They're measured in what's left of a woman's heart when everything else is gone. Sleep doesn't come easy, but that's all right. I've got a long drive tomorrow and an even longer walk down an aisle nobody invited me to. And when I get there, I won't be quiet anymore. We leave Boston before the sun is even thinking about coming up. The old Buick smells like coffee and the peppermint candies Richard keeps in the glove box for my nausea. The veil is in a plain white box on the back seat, wrapped in tissue like it's sleeping. I keep one hand on it the whole time, like a mother checking a baby's breath. We're 3 hours south of the city, somewhere past Hartford when Richard clears his throat the way he does when he's carrying something heavy. Die. He reaches into his coat pocket and pulls out a little red USB drive. This is the donation paperwork, the whole retirement fund. I did it yesterday morning, right after you fell asleep. I stare at the drive. You moved it all? Every penny. Signed it over to the Tailoring Skills Development Fund. Irrevocable. Olivia doesn't know yet. The car feels suddenly too small. That money was supposed to keep the shop open if the cancer won. It was supposed to bury us decent. Instead, it's gone to apprentices who'll never know our names. Richard keeps his eyes on the road. Last week, he stopped by to deliver Olivia's final fitting. The people there thought he was delivery personnel, and he was left alone in the sunroom with the wedding planner. He clearly overheard a conversation between Alistair and Olivia. Alistair spoke about disposing of an older woman once the money was in the joint account, claiming this person was an embarrassment. Olivia laughed and agreed, commenting that her mother was sweet but no longer photographed well. Olivia then requested that Alistair ensure the others stay home, suggesting it would be easier if they vanished from the pictures. The words hit me like a slap, but I don't flinch. I've been expecting them for months. Still, hearing them out loud is different. It's a knife sliding between ribs you didn't know were broken. Richard's voice drops to almost nothing. I stood there holding her damn veil like an idiot while my own daughter planned how to erase me. I reach over and cover his hand on the gear shift. You did right with the money, baby. And you did right telling me. He nods, eyes wet. We drive in silence for another 100 miles, just the hum of tires and the soft click of the turn signal when he passes slower cars. Then, outside Fredericksburg, he suddenly yanks the wheel and pulls onto the shoulder so fast gravel spits up against the doors. My heart jumps into my throat. He points across the street at a sleek black Mercedes, parked in front of a brick law office with gold letters. Harrison and Pierce. Family Law. Getting out of the driver's side, straightens his cuffs, laughs at something the woman beside him says, is Alistair. The woman is tall, red hair twisted up in a knot, expensive coat. I've never seen her before in my life, but the way he touches the small of her back is not the way a man touches his lawyer. Richard's knuckles are white on the steering wheel. That's him. That's definitely him. I squint through the windshield. Alistair opens the passenger door for the woman, leans in, kisses her cheek. Slow, familiar. My stomach turns. Richard reaches into the center console and pulls out his phone. The screen shows a voice memo dated 5 days ago, 4 minutes 52 seconds long. I recorded something else that day in the sunroom, he says, voice shaking. Wasn't sure I'd ever play it for you. But if that's him walking into a lawyer's office with another woman the week before the wedding... He doesn't finish. He doesn't have to. I take the phone from his hand. My thumb hovers over play. Across the street, Alistair shuts the car door, offers the red-haired woman his arm, and they disappear inside the building like they own the whole damn world. Richard looks at me, waiting. I press play. And whatever comes out of that speaker next is going to change everything. The Buick rolls up to the wrought iron gates of Belmead Manor just as the sun is sliding behind the Blue Ridge. The place looks like a wedding cake somebody left out in the heat. Too white, too perfect, too much. A security guard in a black suit steps out, hand raised like he's stopping traffic. Behind him, taped across the gate like a wanted poster, are 2 blown-up photos. Me and Richard, smiling at last year's Christmas. Underneath, in bold red letters, public shame threat, do not admit. My stomach flips so hard I taste metal, but I swallow it down. I sit frozen, fingers curled so tight around the veil box, the cardboard edges bite into my palms, the cancer gnawing deeper in my bones like it's celebrating the moment. Richard kills the engine with one twist. The sudden silence is louder than any scream. He doesn't look at me, doesn't curse, doesn't even breathe heavy. He just climbs out, slow and deliberate, the way he used to when the bankman came knocking, walks straight to that hateful poster. His big tailor's hands grab the top corners, and he rips it clean in half, then again, paper tearing like skin. The pieces flutter down. He crushes them into the mud with the heel of the same brown shoes he wore to Olivia's kindergarten graduation, grinding until the red letters bleed into the dirt. The guard is already shouting into his radio, "Code whatever, unauthorized, get security down here now." Richard never even glances at him. He comes around to my side, opens the door, and offers me his arm exactly the way he did 41 years ago on these same Virginia hills when I was 8 months pregnant and terrified the gravel would send me sprawling. "Easy, Di," he murmurs, voice low and steady. "I got you." I take his arm. My legs feel like wet thread, but I make them work. 1 step, 2. The gravel crunches under my flats. That's when I look up. There she is, 2nd floor balcony, white railing drowning in white roses. Olivia in a champagne silk robe, hair in fat rollers holding a long-stemmed glass like she was born to it. She's staring straight down, right at me. Our eyes lock. I wait. God, I wait. For a wave. For her lips to shape the word mom. For anything that says she remembers the woman who stayed up all night sewing her prom dress when the chemo had me throwing up every 20 minutes. She does nothing. Then, slow as pouring honey, she lifts that glass a few inches. turns her shoulder just enough so the woman behind her, Alistair's mother in pearls and judgment, can see the gesture perfectly. And she smiles the smallest, politest, cruelest smile I have ever seen on my child's face. A toast, not to me, to the woman who told her I was an embarrassment. My knees buckle. Richard's arm is the only thing keeping me upright. "She's toasting her, Di," he says, voice cracking on the last word. "She's actually toasting her." I feel the cancer flare hot and triumphant in my chest, but something colder rises right alongside it. I straighten my spine one vertebra at a time. Richard's hand tightens around mine, steady, strong, furious. He leans in so only I can hear. "They have crossed the line, Diane. We cannot retreat anymore." His voice is quiet, but it's the same tone he used the day the bank tried to take the shop in '89. The day he told them they'd have to go through him first. I look at the torn sign bleeding red ink into the wet gravel. I look at my daughter raising a glass to the woman who will never love her half as much as I do. And something inside me that's been dying for months finally clicks into place. I squeeze Richard's hand back. "We know what we must do next," I whisper. The guard is still shouting, waving his arms. Gates stay locked. Somewhere inside, string music starts warming up for a wedding that hasn't earned the right to happen yet. Richard opens the back door, lifts out the white veil box like it weighs 1,000 pounds, and tucks it under his arm. I take one last look at Olivia on that balcony. She's already turned away, laughing at something the makeup girl said. I smile, small, tired, mean as hell. "Walk with me tomorrow, because Mama's coming inside whether they open the gates or not. And when I do, I'm bringing 45 years of stitches, every tear I ever cried into silk, and one dying woman's last promise. See you on the other side of those doors." We don't speak the whole 20-minute drive. The Buick's headlights carve tunnels through the dark Virginia backroads until we pull into the gravel lot of the Blue Ridge Motor Lodge, neon vacancy sign flickering like it's on its last breath. Room 12 smells like old cigarettes and pine cleaner. Richard carries the veil box like it's made of glass. Richard locked the door behind him, leaned his back against it, and finally let the anger flood out. He called the act of hanging our pictures on the gate libelous and public humiliation. He suggested we should call the police immediately, file a complaint, and make them take the sign down in front of everyone, reaching for his phone. However, I sat on the edge of the sagging bed and slowly shook my head. I explained that this had to be handled the Montgomery Taylor's way, not the legal way, and my soft voice immediately stopped him. Richard looked at me as if I had lost my mind, expressing shock that we were being treated like criminals. I confirmed that I knew their actions, but I explained that pursuing proceedings, calling the police, lawyers, and waiting for a court date would create noise and take years. I emphasized that I didn't have years left, and all I had was tomorrow. Richard sat down next to me, his shoulders slumped with exhaustion and disappointment, rubbing his face with both hands and asking what we were doing here after all. I reach across Richard's legs to the nightstand drawer and tug it open. Inside is the same folded road map we bought at a Shell station outside Richmond in 1998, the year Olivia turned 15, and we promised her a college fund. The paper is soft as cloth now, coffee rings faded to brown ghosts, the creases permanent. I spread it across the scratchy motel blanket. Belle Meade Manor sits inside a red circle I drew with a dying Sharpie the night I sold my wedding dress. The thick blue line north, home, Boston, safety, looks like a vein begging to be cut. Richard's breath catches when I pull the stack from my purse. I lay each page down like I'm dealing cards in a game nobody else knows we're playing. Alistair's sealed bankruptcy filing, the Virginia fraud indictment with tomorrow's date stamped across the top, the notarized receipt that says every cent of our retirement now belongs to the Tailoring Skills Development Fund. Kids who'll never have to auction their mama's dreams to pay for someone else's fairy tale. I set the white veil box on top like the final weight. Richard's eyes shine wet in the neon glow. He doesn't blink. I lift the lid. The veil sighs out gardenia and 45 years of Sundays. I smooth it once, reverent, feeling every seed pearl I sowed while Olivia practiced kicking in my belly. Then I let it fall across the map. The lace lands soft as a lie, draping over the red circle, the delicate scalloped hem sliding north until it completely covers the blue escape route. There is no road home anymore. Richard's voice breaks. Die. I meet his eyes. This isn't about getting even, baby. It's about finishing the dress I started the day I stitched that first pearl, while our girl turned somersaults inside me. Tomorrow that boy is going to stand in a church I paid for with my own blood and try to buy my daughter with a mouthful of lies, and she's going to open her arms and let him. I slide the documents underneath the veil, just far enough that the corners stick out like sharp white teeth waiting to bite. Police can slap a fine on a sign, I say, voice steady for the first time all day. They can't fix a soul that's been taught her parents are disposable, but a mother with nothing left to lose can still try one last time before the cancer finishes the job for me. Richard stares at the map, at the veil swallowing the way back to the life we knew, and the tears finally spill. "You're really going to walk in there tomorrow?" he whispers, not a question. I close my fingers over the lace, feeling the invisible stitches that hold the real prenup inside the hem. "I'm walking in there tomorrow," I tell him, "and I'm finishing the only dress that ever really mattered. Only this time, the hem isn't lined with hope. It's lined with every promise they broke, and it's sharp enough to cut." He reaches out, touches the veil like it might burn him, then lets his hand fall. Outside, thunder rumbles over the mountains like God clearing his throat. I hold the veil box on my lap and stare at the map where the only road left runs straight through tomorrow. The path I choose will have no turning back. Sleep tight, my sweet tired warriors. Tomorrow we stop being quiet. The first real light of the day is sliding across the cracked ceiling when I step out of the bathroom already dressed in the simple black crepe that is hung in my closet since Mama's funeral. The same dress that has seen 3 miscarriages, 1 high school graduation, and the closing of the shop the bank almost took from us. And now it clings to my cancer-thin frame like a warning, while Richard stands behind me, fastening each tiny button with the same trembling reverence he showed the morning I married him 41 years ago, his breath warm against my nape as he whispers again that we can still change our minds, still turn the Buick north, still let the veil stay hidden and the money stay gone and the truth stay buried. But I shake my head, because the woman who once believed quiet forgiveness would fix everything died somewhere between the oncology ward and the moment Olivia lifted her glass to another mother yesterday. And in her place stands someone colder, clearer, and infinitely more dangerous now that the only thing left to lose is the last thread tying me to the daughter who forgot where she came from. Richard knots his old navy tie in the mirror beside me, the silk so worn it crackles like dry leaves. The same tie he wore when Olivia took her first steps, and when we buried his father, and when we signed away our retirement to keep apprentices from ever having to auction their dreams. And every time the knot slips, he curses softly under his breath, until finally it lies straight against his throat like a noose. He's chosen himself. And then he turns to me with eyes that have memorized every version of Diane Montgomery there ever was, and asks one final time, voice rough with 41 years of loving me, "You absolutely sure die, because once we walk out that door with that veil, there's no quiet road left." And I answer by lifting the lid of the white box so the gardenia-scented lace can breathe its 45-year-old ghosts into the stale motel air. Then I fold it small enough to hide inside my purse, yet large enough to smother every lie they're about to speak in front of God and 500 paid witnesses. And when the clasp snaps shut, it sounds like the final stitch in a lifetime of seams that have finally come undone. We are already moving down the dim hallway, my hand tucked into the crook of Richard's elbow, the same way it was the day I walked barefoot and pregnant toward him, because we couldn't afford shoes that fit. When the night receptionist comes skidding around the corner in house slippers that slap the linoleum like panicked applause, her face the color of old ashes, as she thrusts the lobby phone toward me and stammers in one breathless rush. "Mrs. Montgomery, I'm so sorry to bother you, but there's a lawyer from Boston holding on line 1, and he's yelling that your retirement fund account has been completely emptied overnight, every single penny withdrawn without authorization, and he needs to speak to you right now because the bank is threatening legal action." The words hit me like ice water poured straight into my veins because Richard and I both know we signed those funds away ourselves yesterday morning. Irrevocable, notarized, witnessed. So there should be nothing left for anyone to steal. Yet someone clearly reached into the grave we dug for ourselves and took whatever bones remained. Richard's grip on my arm turns bruising while the girl keeps repeating, "He says it's urgent, ma'am. Real urgent." And I stare at the receiver swinging from her trembling hand and feel the veil inside my purse grow heavier than every promise I ever sewed into silk. Because whoever just robbed the last crumbs from a dying woman's table is about to learn that a mother's love, once it finally turns, becomes the sharpest blade on earth. And today, that blade is dressed in mourning black and walking straight into a cathedral built with my blood money to collect what is owed. Richard already has the receiver pressed to his ear before the receptionist finishes her sentence, his face carved from the same hard oak he uses for cutting tables. And I stand there in my funeral black dress, clutching the veil purse so tightly the beads leave dents in my palm, while the girl hovers in the doorway wringing her hands and apologizing over and over, as if any of this is her fault. But all I can hear is the low, urgent rumble of Richard's voice demanding to be put through to whoever called about the Montgomery retirement account, because we both know we signed every penny away yesterday morning in front of a notary who smelled like menthols and boredom, so there should be nothing left for anyone to steal. Yet the lawyer on the other end keeps talking faster and faster until Richard's eyes widen and the color drains clean out of him. He turns to me with an expression I have never seen in 41 years seen on my husband's face, and he says, voice cracking like thin ice, "It wasn't us who withdrew it, Di." The full amount did land in the Tailoring Skills Development Fund exactly like we arranged, but sometime after midnight, the Foundation's board received an emergency instructions to transfer every single dollar into a personal trust account, and the beneficiary signature is female. The routing instructions came from a Boston IP, and the name on the new account isn't yours, and it isn't mine. He pulls the phone away from his ear long enough for the lawyer's tinny voice to squeaking about immediate injunctions and possible embezzlement charges to leak into the hallway. Then Richard presses the speaker button so we can both hear the man recite the account holder's full legal name. And when those syllables hit the air, my knees almost fold because the woman who now holds every remaining cent we had in this world is the same red-haired stranger we watched Alistair kiss outside that law office yesterday afternoon, the one whose hand rested possessively on his arm like it had been there for years. I feel the cancer flare hot in my chest right alongside a colder, clearer fire, because this means Alistair didn't just plan to marry my daughter for her money. He's been moving money through another woman the whole time, hiding it, laundering it, money-airing for the day. Olivia became dead weight, and the realization lands between Richard and me like a guillotine blade because the donation we thought was our final act of defiance has just become the perfect parachute for the man who spent the last year convincing our daughter her parents were an embarrassment. Richard thanks the lawyer in a voice that doesn't sound like his own, promises callbacks and affidavits and whatever else the man is shouting about, then hangs up and stands there staring at the dead phone while the receptionist backs away muttering apologies. And I watch my husband's shoulders rise and fall once, twice, like a man deciding whether to drown or swim. And when he finally looks at me, the relief is gone, replaced by something ancient and biblical. He says so softly I almost miss it, "That son of a bitch has been married to her the money longer than he's been engaged to our little girl." And I nod because the last puzzle piece just slid into place with an audible click. and the picture it makes is uglier than anything I imagined in my darkest chemo dreams. Because the red-haired woman isn't just a mistress or a lawyer, and every dollar we poured into this wedding was simply the cover charge Alistair paid to finish robbing us blind. I reach over and gently take the phone from Richard's hand, set it on the counter like it's contaminated, then smooth my black skirt and check that the veil is still safe inside my purse, because suddenly the hem lined with invisible legal thread feels like the only honest thing left in this entire commonwealth, and I look my husband in the eye and tell him what he already knows in his bones. The wedding, starting in less than 2 hours, isn't just built on our sacrifices anymore, and the woman waiting at the altar in white has already been replaced by the woman waiting in the wings with our money. Richard exhales a laugh that has no humor in it whatsoever, runs a hand through what's left of his hair, and says, "Well, Di, looks like we're not the only ones bringing a surprise to the ceremony today." I smile for the first time since we crossed the Virginia line, a small, sharp thing that feels like breaking glass in my mouth, because whoever that red-haired woman is, whatever her real name is, she just made the mistake of stealing from a mother who has already buried every dream she ever had except one. And that last dream is folded in my purse, stitched with 45 years of unbreakable promises, and it is about to walk down an aisle whether anyone likes it or not. We slip through the service gate while the morning mist still clings to the boxwoods, Richard holding the kitchen door just wide enough for me to pass without the black dress catching. And the moment we cross into Belle Meade, the scent of orchids and sugar hits me like a debt I already paid in full. We move fast along the back hallway past crates of champagne and waiters who never look twice at an old couple dressed for a funeral they weren't invited to. My hand inside the purse, clutching the single ivory envelope that has traveled 900 miles for this one purpose. The gift table sits under a chandelier that cost more than our first shop, a mountain of silver and crystal and envelopes thick with money from people who never asked why the bride's mother was missing from every photograph. And I walk straight to it like I still belong, sliding my plain envelope between 2 boxes wrapped in satin ribbon. No name on the front, no greeting, only the weight of the photograph inside. My wedding dress laid out on an auction table in Boston, pearls catching the light like tiny accusations. The dress I sold so this day could happen. I step back beside Richard, heart beating slow and heavy now that the first move is made, and we wait while guests arrive and cameras flash and the orchestra tunes strings that were paid for with my blood. Olivia drifts over the way every bride does when the day finally bends to her will, shoulders relaxed under the weight of the veil I swapped in the dark, fingers trailing over ribbons the color of champagne, smiling at cards that wish her forever, and her hand lands on my envelope because it is the only one without calligraphy or pretense. And she opens it with the same tilt of her head she used at 7 when she found the bicycle hidden behind bolts of muslin, the same tilt she used at 12 when she discovered the college fund statements tucked in my drawer, the same tilt she used at 22 when she told me Alistair was the one. And I smiled instead of screaming, and she slides the photograph free with nails I paid for, holding it up to the chandelier light so the pearls on my wedding dress catch fire one last time. And for 3 endless seconds, she studies the gown that carried her first heartbeat, the gown that paid for every orchid dripping from these walls. And I watch her face settle into a cool, practiced smile that never touches her eyes. Then she turns and hands the picture to Alistair without a tremor, as if it is nothing more than a seating mix-up. Alistair takes it between 2 fingers, glances down, recognition hitting him so fast his pupils flare because he was the one who stood in our kitchen 6 months ago, telling me the florist needed another $20,000 and suggesting so gently that my old dress might fetch a nice price if I ever wanted to contribute meaningfully. And now the proof of that contribution stares back at him from glossy paper, every pearl a silent accusation, every inch of lace a receipt. And when his gaze lifts and locks on me, standing 20 feet away in the same black I wore to bury my mother, His mouth curves into a slow, deliberate challenge that says everything without a word. You think this wounds us? You think one old photograph can stop what we have built on your bones? Richard's hand tightens on my arm until I feel bone against bone, and he whispers low enough that only I hear, "They're not scared, Di. Not even a little." I squeeze back once, hard, because the photograph was never meant to scare them. It was only the first stitch, the warning thread, the one you pull so they notice the seam before you rip the entire garment apart in front of God and 500 witnesses. I smile across the roses and champagne at the man who stole my daughter and the girl who let him. A small, quiet smile that has nothing left to lose. Because that dress in the picture was just the beginning, and the next thing I take from my purse will cut deeper than any auction ever could. We leave the gift table behind while Alistair's challenge still hangs in the air like smoke, and Richard guides me through a side door marked "Bridal Party Only," because he knows the layout from the countless fittings he delivered, and we move fast down a hallway lined with gilded mirrors that throw back 100 dying women in black until we reach the bride's dressing room. The door cracked open just enough for us to slip inside unnoticed. The room smells of hairspray and panic and the ghost of my own perfume because Olivia still uses the same gardenia scent I wore the day she was born. And on the vanity sits an open MacBook glowing soft blue, the screensaver swirling lazy circles while the rest of the wedding waits downstairs for a bride who thinks she has already won. Richard sits down without a word, his tailor's fingers moving over the trackpad with the same precision he uses to cut a perfect notch collar. And within 30 seconds, the password screen folds away because Alistair never changed the factory default he uses on every device, and Richard's mouth sets into a hard line as the desktop opens to a folder simply labeled Final Docs. He clicks the prenuptial agreement draft, and the pages scroll past like a death sentence written. Feeling the cancer ache flare behind my ribs as I read clause after clause that strips Olivia of everything we ever built, until we reach the section that makes the air leave my lungs in one slow hiss. In the event of divorce or death, Alistair Finch shall receive 90% of the assets of Montgomery Taylors, including the building, the equipment, the client list, and any remaining goodwill, leaving Olivia with 10% and no right of refusal. Richard keeps scrolling, his breath coming faster now, and I watch the rage settle into his eyes the way it did the day the bank tried to take the shop in '89. And then the document header appears at the top of the page, the part most people never read. And there it is in crisp black letters, prepared by Evelyn R. Caldwell, Esky. Caldwell and Associates, Richmond, Virginia, and the name hits me like a slap because Evelyn Caldwell is the red-haired woman we saw Alistair kissing outside the law office yesterday, the same woman whose name now owns every dollar we donated to save apprentices who will never have to sell their wedding dresses to survive. Richard turns to me so slowly I hear his neck crack, and his voice comes out rough as gravel when he says, "Di, the woman he's been hiding money with, the woman who took our donation, she's the one who wrote this poison." And I feel the floor tilt under my feet because everything suddenly snaps into perfect, terrible focus. Alistair never planned to marry Olivia for love or even for the scraps we had left. He planned to marry her long enough to trigger this clause, then divorce her and walk away with the shop my father opened in 1957, the shop I kept alive through recessions and cancer, and every promise I ever made to the scared pregnant girl who became Richard's wife. I stare at the name glowing on the screen, Evelyn R. Caldwell, the woman whose manicured hand rested on Alistair's arm like it belonged there, the woman who now holds our retirement money and 90% of our legacy in her perfectly drafted claws. I whisper the only question that matters anymore. Who is she, after all? Because somewhere in this manor, she is probably sipping champagne and waiting for the ceremony to finish so she can collect what was never hers to begin with. Richard closes the laptop with a soft, final click, and when he looks at me, his eyes are wet but steady, and he says the words that turn the last of my fear into something sharp and clean. "She's the reason we're here, Di. And she just made sure we're not leaving without her name on every tongue in Virginia." I reach for his hand, feel the calluses that have measured and cut and stitched a lifetime of love, and I squeeze once, hard because the midpoint has arrived and the game just changed forever. The reception is in full bloom, 500 guests glittering under chandeliers that cost more than our shop makes in a decade, and Alistair stands at the head table with a microphone in one hand and Olivia's waist in the other, voice smooth as the champagne he keeps praising while he thanks everyone for sharing this perfect day. Thanks the vendors, thanks his beautiful bride, thanks the universe for bringing them together, and every word drips with the confidence of a man who believes he has already won everything that matters. Richard and I stand at the edge of the ballroom in the shadows near the DJ booth, my black dress making me invisible among the sequins and pastel suits, and I feel the cancer throb behind my ribs like a second heart that wants to burst out and scream the truth. But I wait until Alistair finishes his toast and the room erupts in polite, expensive applause. Then I move. I walk straight to the DJ, an old habit of taking what I need when no one is looking, and I simply reach past him and lift the microphone from its stand before he can stop me, and the feedback squeal cuts the applause dead, every head turning toward the woman in funeral black who has no business being here. I press the button on the small projector Richard set up 10 minutes ago behind a potted palm, and the far wall lights up with the seal of the Virginia Circuit Court, then the indictment page in stark black and white. Commonwealth of Virginia vs. Alistair J. Finch, charges of wire fraud, bankruptcy fraud, and intentional concealment of assets, and I let the words roll out slow and clear over the silent ballroom. "This man," I say, my voice carrying to every corner because grief has made it stronger than it has any right to be. "This man standing beside my daughter has been hiding a bankruptcy so deep it would drown this entire manor, and every dollar spent on this wedding came from the sale of my own wedding dress and the retirement fund we emptied to give Olivia the day she wanted." The murmurs start immediately, a wave of silk and shock moving through the crowd, phones rising like periscopes, and I watch Olivia's face drain of color while her hand flies to the veil I swapped this morning. The veil that carries my real vows stitched in invisible thread. But Alistair does not flinch. He lifts one hand, calm as a conductor silencing an orchestra, and the room quiets again because money has that power. And he smiles the same slow smile he gave me across the gift table, and he reaches inside his morning coat and pulls out a single sheet of heavy cream paper, holding it up like a priest raising the host. "Unfortunately, this accusation was dismissed last week," he says, voice warm and amused and utterly unafraid. "The court found no merit, no evidence, just the bitter imagination of people who were asked not to attend today. And if you need proof, here it is. My marriage certificate with the woman I love." He turned the document toward the projector beam so the gold-embossed seal flashed like a small sun, and the room leaned forward like a starving creature, because nothing interests the upper crust like a scandal served with dessert. Phones went up. The murmuring had begun to form, and there in the embossing was an undeniable date from 3 months ago. The swirling signature of the county clerk, and 2 names bound together in official ink that I never imagined could exist side by side in this life or any other. Names that made the cancer in my chest suddenly feel small compared to the betrayal burning through every vein. My breath stops. Richard's hand finds mine and squeezes until bones creak, because the bride on that certificate is not Olivia. The ballroom has gone so still. Then he turns to Olivia, who stands beside him, white roses scattered like the pieces of every promise I ever made her. And he smiles at her the way a cat smiles at a bird whose wings he has already clipped. "I have married the woman I love," he repeats, softer now, And I married her months ago in a quiet ceremony that needed no orchids, no 10-tier cake, no 500 witnesses who never once asked why the bride's parents were missing from the story. Because true love, unlike this little production, does not require a dying woman's life savings to feel real. Olivia makes no sound at first, only stares at him with eyes suddenly too large for her face. The same eyes that once looked up at me from a hospital bassinet and trusted that Mama would fix everything. And I watched the color drain from her cheeks the way it drained from mine the day the oncologist said the word terminal. Except this time the disease has a name and a smile and a marriage certificate dated 3 months before he ever put a ring on her finger. Alistair lets the silence stretch just long enough for every phone to rise like a forest of judgment. Then he pivots toward me, where I stand in funeral black beside Richard, and his voice drops to something intimate, meant only for me, yet loud enough for every hidden microphone to catch. "She's the woman from the lawyer's office," he says, savoring every syllable. "The brilliant attorney who helped me clear those ridiculous fraud charges your desperate imagination cooked up. And yes, Diane, she is also Richard and Diane's former lawyer, the one you trusted with every secret, every contract, every tear you cried while you sold your own wedding dress to pay for this circus. The same Evelyn Caldwell who has been mine, body, mind, and bank account, long before your daughter ever walked into my life. Evelyn Caldwell was the woman we invited into our kitchen, the woman we paid to protect Olivia, the woman who watched me sign away our retirement while sipping coffee from the mug Olivia painted for me in 3rd grade, the same red-haired woman we saw Alistair kiss outside that law office, the same woman whose name now owns every dollar we bled to save apprentices from our fate. And the realization lands between us like a coffin lid slamming shut. Every move we made, every sacrifice, every secret clause we thought we hid was delivered straight into Alistair's hands by the one person we trusted to guard our daughter's future. Alistair turns fully to me now, eyes glittering with the purest triumph I have ever seen, and his voice becomes almost gentle, a lullaby wrapped around a blade. "Your secret clause in the prenuptial agreement, Diane?" he says. "That clever little poison pill you thought would save the day? Evelyn sent it to me the same afternoon you asked her to add it, because she's been mine longer than Olivia ever was, and she thought it was adorable, really, the way you tried to play lawyer with a woman who was already sleeping in my bed." Olivia makes a sound then, small, broken. Richard's grip finds my hand again, but this time it is cold, lifeless. And for one terrible heartbeat, everything we planned, everything we bled for, everything we stitched in the dark, collapses into dust. All is lost. But the veil is still on her head, and the final clause, the one Evelyn never saw, the one Richard and I added after she sent the draft, is still waiting an invisible thread along the hem. The ballroom has become a tomb. Richard catches me before I hit the marble, his arms the same arms that carried me over the threshold of the little apartment above the shop 41 years ago when I was 8 months pregnant and terrified. And now he lowers me gently to the floor because the fight has gone out of both of us in the same heartbeat. I look down at my hands, empty except for the black dress that feels suddenly heavier than any bridal gown I ever sewed. And then I look up at the veil on Olivia's head. My veil, the one I swapped in the dark while she slept the night before the wedding, the one that carries every real vow Richard and I ever made, everything we planned, every secret clause, every dollar bled, every tear stitched into invisible thread, has just been laughed away by a man who was 3 moves ahead from the beginning. And the cancer in my chest flares so hot I almost welcome it because dying right here on this cold floor would be easier than living with the truth that the lawyer we trusted sold us out long before Alistair ever smiled at our daughter. Richard kneels beside me. He grips my hand so tightly I feel the bones grind together the way they did the day the bank tried to take the shop. Only this time, there is no fight left in his eyes, only a hollow kind of grief that mirrors my own. He whispers against my skin, voice raw and broken. She didn't send everything, die. Evelyn only sent the draft, the version we showed her before we added the final clause. She never saw what we did after she left the shop that night. The words are so quiet only I can hear them, but they land inside me like a match dropped into dry leaves, because the final clause, the one Richard and I wrote together at 3 a.m. while I cried into the lace and he held the legal dictionary with shaking hands, the one we stitched into the hem of this very veil in thread no one can see unless they know exactly where to look, is still waiting, untouched, unknown, and suddenly the tomb becomes a battlefield again. That clause is simple, brutal, final. Any manipulation, any second contract, any secret marriage established during the engagement period automatically renders the entire prenuptial agreement null and void. And because Alistair has just announced to 500 witnesses and a dozen live streams that he married Evelyn Caldwell 3 months ago, while still engaged to Olivia, while still promising Olivia forever, while still letting us sell our lives to pay for this day, the trap we set in invisible thread has just snapped shut around his throat. Richard feels the change in me the way he has always felt every shift in my breathing for 41 years, and his grip tightens again, not with despair now, but with the old fire, and I lift my eyes to the veil trembling on Olivia's head. My veil, the nuclear weapon I carried 900 miles in a plain white box, and I know that the darkest night is over because the dawn is sewn into the hem, and it is time to let it burn. I walk straight through the parted sea of silk and diamonds toward the head table where Alistair still stands. I stop 3 feet from them. I do not raise my voice. I do not waste breath on money or lawyers or stolen retirement funds. I speak only to the lace itself, to the 45 years of promises stitched into every seed pearl and every invisible thread, and my words come out soft, steady, unstoppable, meant for my daughter's ears alone, yet loud enough for every hidden microphone to catch. My veil, I say, looking straight into Olivia's eyes so she cannot escape the mother who sang her to sleep through thunderstorms and fevers and every night of her childhood, the one I secretly swapped the night before this wedding, while you slept, believing everything was perfect, the one I wore when I promised your father forever while you kicked inside me, demanding to be born into a world that would one day try to sell you for orchids and applause, the one that carries a true vow made before God and kept through every storm we ever faced, is the same veil resting on your head right now. And every step you took down that aisle wearing it meant you accepted my vow as your own, meant you stood on my honor, my sacrifice, my love, and promised to keep it clean. Olivia's lips part but no sound escapes, and Alistair's smile falters for the first time. I take one more step, close enough now to touch the lace if I reach out, close enough for them both to see that the woman they tried to erase is still breathing fire. That veil is the only contract that matters today, I continue, voice still soft, still terrible, because sewn into its hem in thread, no traitor ever saw is the clause that says any second marriage, any secret contract, any lie told while wearing these vows renders every promise you are about to make null and void before God, before the Commonwealth of Virginia, and before the mother whose life you sold to pay for this lie. I open my mouth to finish the sentence that will end everything they built on my bones. Before the words can leave my lips, a young server in a white jacket comes sprinting across the dance floor, tablet held high like a frantic messenger from another lifetime. He skids to a stop beside Richard, breathless, eyes wide with panic, thrusting the screen toward him with shaking hands, while the words tumble out in one panicked rush. "Sir, ma'am, the police are on the main line. They say they require immediate viewing of Mr. Alistair Finch's marriage certificate. With your lawyer, they have a warrant. They're outside right now. They need it verified live." Richard takes the tablet, and I see the screen light up with an official seal and a live feed of uniformed officers already pushing through the manor gates. And the final piece, the one we never planned, we never dared hope for, has just arrived at the exact moment it will destroy them most beautifully. I speak into the microphone that is still live because no one has dared turn it off, my voice steady and soft and final. The evidence of Alistair's second marriage to our former lawyer completely invalidates his prenuptial agreement with Olivia, because the clause we added after Evelyn left our kitchen, the clause she never saw, says any secret marriage, any manipulation, any second contract during the engagement period renders the entire agreement null and void before God and the Commonwealth of Virginia, and my veil, symbolizing the only true vow ever made in this room, has been stained by your deceit. Alistair's face collapses, the mask finally cracking as the police tablet in Richard's hand begins flashing red with an incoming warrant, and the room erupts into chaos, guests screaming, phones rising, security pushing through the doors. But I am already moving, already reaching past Olivia's trembling shoulders for the lace that has carried my heartbeat for 45 years. I grip the veil with both hands and rip it from her head in one violent motion, the combs tearing free with strands of her hair, the silk screaming as it comes away, and I hurl it out the open, the final clause now visible to anyone who looks because the invisible thread has finally been pulled. Alistair sees the police closing in, sees the tablet confirming his secret marriage is now public record, sees every exit filling with uniforms, and he runs, shoving past guests, knocking over a tower of champagne flutes that shatter like gunfire as he disappears through a side door and out of Belmead Manor forever. Olivia drops to her knees among the scattered roses, sobbing my name for the first time since she was small, reaching for me with hands that once held mine through every childhood fever. But I am already turning away, already pulling the round-trip bus ticket from my purse, the one I bought this morning with the last $20 to my name, and I place it gently on the marble in front of her. "This ticket will take you home whenever you're ready," I tell her, voice soft. But the mother who would have forgiven anything died somewhere between the auction block and the moment you toasted another woman while I stood locked outside gates I paid for. Richard takes my arm, steady as the day he carried me over the threshold of the little apartment above the shop, and together we walk through the wreckage of the wedding we funded, past the ruined veil bleeding in the mud, past the police cuffing empty air where Alistair used to stand, past 500 guests who will never again look at a wedding the same way, and we do not look back, not once, as we leave Belmead Manor behind us forever. The Buick is waiting where we left it, engine still warm, Vermont already calling with quiet mountains, and a small white house we bought with the change left after the donation. And we drive north while the sun sets red behind us, two old tailors who kept the only promise that ever mattered. We are going home, darlings. The dress is finished, the thread is cut, and for the first time in years, we are free. My sweet, tired warriors. Come here, let me talk to you just like we're sitting together on my little porch in Vermont, the mountains quiet and the tea getting cold between us. Did this story hurt in all the right places? Did it make you remember every time you gave everything and got nothing back? Did it make you feel seen, finally seen, after all those nights you cried alone? Tell me, darling, where are you watching from tonight? Which city, which little room, which corner of the world is holding you right now? Drop it in the comments. Let me come find you there. If this story wrapped its arms around your heart the way I hoped it would, if it gave you even one moment of justice you've never felt in real life, then please, if you can, send a super thanks, even the smallest one, because every dollar keeps this old woman's voice alive to tell the next story for every mother, every grandmother, every wounded heart still waiting for her vindication. You are not alone. You never were. Look on your screen now. There are 2 new real-life stories waiting that will hold you just as tight. My channel is full of us, full of women who refuse to stay quiet. Hit subscribe, turn on that little bell, and we'll keep meeting here, night after night, until every tear has its reckoning. Thank you for staying with me until the very last stitch. I love you more than words. See you in the comments, my darlings, and in the next story. With all my love and every bit of respect a dying mother still has left, Diane.